Welcome to Watch Me Wednesday. I'm Lisa Jackson from Sew It Saturday. Today's project is this super cute bandana that we're going to make in less than 10 minutes. Your first step for the project is to find a fabric. You're going to need a stretchy knit, and you'll need about 3/4 of a yard. That's a small amount of fabric that you can pretty much find at a remnant section at any fabric store. That way you can make this project very inexpensively. I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you're a beginner sewer and you really don't want to invest a lot as you begin to sew. You want to focus on the practice and not making sure you're taking care of your fabric. As we all know, what's even better than inexpensive is free. If you have an old t-shirt, leggings, or what have you that you can use for this project the first time through, that's even better. So out of this fabric, once you found a nice stretchy knit, we're going to cut 2 rectangles. They should be 6 inches by 22 inches, and they need to stretch this way, right? You don't want it to stretch this way. After you've done your cutting, 6 inches by 22 inches, 2 rectangles, we're going to begin to sew. So we're going to take that rectangle and we're going to fold it lengthwise, and we're going to fold it right sides together, which is a very common sewing term, right? It either is going to tell you to fold something right sides together or wrong sides together. And right side is just the side that you want to show when that project is done. I like polka dots, so we're going to put the polka dot side right sides together. I'm going to fold it like this. What's really nice about this reversible fabric is that it's striped on the other side. That's going to help me make a nice straight seam once I start sewing. Before we start to sew though, we want to give you a few tips on sewing with this particular type of fabric, which is a knit. When you're out and about and you want to be comfortable, you probably migrate toward or choose a knit fabric because it stretches with you. If you're going to sit for a long time, run, what have you, you're probably pretty much going to go for a nice stretchy knit that goes with you. This stretchy knit, what we love for that reason, is also going to stretch when you start sewing with it. So this is, again, for our beginner sewers that love to help. Sewing machines pretty much have one purpose in life, and that's to sew fabric. It really does know how to move that fabric along. So we want to be careful that we're not shoving it in and we're not pulling at it. If you shove it in, you're going to get wrinkles in your seam, and if you start tugging at it, you're going to have puckers. So if you look at your sewing machine, this is the presser foot. Underneath the presser foot, these little rigid little lines here, those are your feed dogs, and their one purpose in life is to move fabric. You don't need to help them, okay? So we're going to put the fabric underneath your presser foot. And another thing I want to bring to your attention is this brightly colored tape here. This tape is at 1/2 inch. That is the seam allowance, another sewing term that you're going to hear a lot of. That's simply how far from the edge of the fabric where you're going to start your seam. A lot of times it's 1/2 inch, and if it's not 1/2 inch, it may be 5/8 if you're doing a lot of clothing. Sometimes they migrate to 5/8 of an inch. I most of the time work with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, so I've done this brightly covered tape. You have markings on the plate of your sewing machine, but they're kind of etched in. They're not always easy to see. So I either use this brightly colored tape or I use a bright Sharpie or something like that. It's a lot easier to see, and you'll find that you are using pretty much the same seam allowance for a lot of work that you're going to be doing. A lot easier to see this, right? So just like when we're sewing anything else, we're going to put that fabric underneath the presser foot. We're going to put the needle down first, always needle down first, and then we're going to put the presser foot down. And that holds that fabric. And again, those feed dogs are ready to do what they do best, move the fabric very cleanly and in a measured way. So we have this nice stripe on the other side. That is another guide for me to make a nice straight seam as I'm going. So I have the brightly colored tape, and if you're using a stripe or a plaid, you have some kind of guidance on the fabric as well. And all we're going to do is sew that all the way out on this rectangle, and on the other rectangle you're going to do the same thing. Once you're done, you'll take from the sewing machine, and we're going to go to the next step, which is turning these tubes out. You have two different ones because you have the two rectangles that you've sewn. And you see I've turned out one already to my nice polka dot. And this is the stripe one. And all we're going to do with this is just turn it inside out. You'll get used to doing this a lot also when you're sewing, turning things out. So much easier when you see you're going to be working with a knit. This is not as fun when you're working with a cotton, which doesn't give as well. So I'm just turning this side out. And we're going to prepare for the last part, which will be folding these two tubes together. And this is another sewing tip I want to give you, is that when you are sewing things, always be aware where your seams are. This is a visible item here. This is going to be on your head. So you don't necessarily want this big bodacious seam, right, to be visible. So when we do this next part, which is folding the tubes together, we're going to pay attention to where our seams are. When you turn both rectangles out, you have nice little tubes. We're going to make sure that the seam is in the middle, okay? Just easy to do. And then, if you can see my table here, I'm going to arrange these two tubes in an X. The bottom one, we're going to have this seam in the middle, and we're going to have it up. So I can see that seam for the bottom part of the X. I'm going to take the other tube, the top part of the tube, and lay it down. And this one, for the top tube, the seam is in the middle again, but it is not shown. So if I'm looking at my X, seam up on the bottom one, and seam down on the top. I'm then going to just fold them together. And you're going to fold the bottom part of the X first. And once you fold that, you'll see that the seam is hidden. This is what we want, right? And then the other one, we're going to do the same thing with the other part of the X. And once you fold that together, you'll notice that that seam is also not showing. Now the last part, you're almost done. We're going to sew these two tubes together, these two folded tubes together. And you'll notice that you have quite a lot to sew through. Now I got this project from Crafty, Katie's blog, which I'm going to add a link so I don't take any credit for her work. But her last instruction were to just simply do one seam through all of these layers. And if you count them, that's 8 layers of fabric. Not only is that not going to be attractive, but that's going to be, if you think about it, really hard to get underneath the presser foot of your sewing machine. So what I did instead, because as you begin to sew, you will find that you read projects and then you figure out which part of the instructions you're actually going to follow. I will say that I did pretty good this time. I only changed one part of it, and it's that last part. So instead of doing one seam, what I did was take each coupling, right, each one that needed to go together, and I kind of fed one into the other. That kind of flattens that seam, and I'll show you on the finished product here. I did a kind of a square type of seam instead. So I inserted one into the other, and then I did a square around just to kind of grab all the layers, but flatten them out, right? For a lot of us that wear, ponytails or have shorter hair, you can't count on the fact that your hair is going to hide the seam, and you want it to look nice, right? So I suggest doing it this way, but you're, free, of course, to follow Katie's instructions as well, and that may work for you also. So you see now I've done my seam, and how cute is that, right? This probably costs, because I used a bargain fabric, maybe 50 cents. And what's better than 50 cents? Free, right? So if you used an old t-shirt or old legging, something like that, you have a bandana that might cost you $4 or $5 in the store, and you pretty much got it for the cost of thread. So super cute bandana, less than 10 minutes, and I'm ready to go. You can make this over and over again. You could change the measurements to, say, instead of 22 inches to 20 inches for a kid. If you had a cute shirt and you wanted to match a bandana or a nice, easy gift, this is a really cute project I think you'll make over and over again. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at sewwithsaturday@gmail.com, and hope to see you again.